Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be sharing about the inheritance that you leave your children. So what the Lord was bringing up to me was he's been very concerned about the children. So he kept on bringing up 31, and then when I opened up my Bible, I landed right on 1 Samuel chapter 31, and I noticed right away that it was about Saul. And so in this chapter, it was talking about how Saul and his three sons had died in the battlefield with him. And so God was sharing with me, he was saying that you can really mess up your children's future. Whatever they were supposed to receive, whatever inheritance they were supposed to receive, they might not even get it because of your actions, because of your choices. And what he was showing me with Saul was, of course, he was the first king of Israel. And at first, he was a good king, but then he started showing little hiccups here and there. And then it was really bad. And he just didn't stop. He was consistently making bad decisions. And it was showing a side of him that was not good. Um, he he received a word from God, and what he would do, and it reminds me of about a lot of people, is that he would twist what God told him to do. He would do half of what he told him to do, and then he would do the other half of what he felt he wanted to do, what he thought was a better idea than what God didn't ask, but he commanded him. So he was wanting to be popular with the people. He didn't want to feel like rejected. And so what he did was he would he would listen to the people. And it got so bad to where God, it says in the Bible that God had regretted making him king. So then after that, God told the prophet Samuel to go anoint a new king, which that king's young David, young King David. This time, Saul was making all kinds of mistakes still. He did not stop there. He kept consistently doing dumb things. He was not a very good leader. He was not a good king. He was not a good father. He was not good influence on his children. And it would show in the Bible where he met David and he started to get jealous because he knew that he was going to be replaced. God had already told him that he messed up way too much. So what he would do is that he would use his own kids to get his way. There was a daughter that he used, Michal, I think that's how you pronounce it. And the only reason why he gave his daughter to him was because he wanted to be a snare to him. He knew that he was going to use her to pretty much be a downfall for David. And, when he was king, he definitely made some bad choices, did some bad things, and then he got to the point where he almost killed his son, Jonathan, a couple times, and which that was his successor, which that wasn't very smart. And even Jonathan would go behind his dad's back and just win battles and do all these things that his dad was not wise enough to do as a king. And so you could tell that Jonathan knew. He knew that his father was not fit to be king. And he saw how how David was sent from God to be the future king. And I start to think about it. If Saul had not messed up, if he had not shown his heart evil, that he was bent on being evil, Jonathan would have been king. His son would have been king. And his bloodline would have been blessed. But because he did so many things that were not good, God would rebuke him and then he would turn around and do it again. He would do something else different that he knew he wasn't supposed to do. And there was a certain pride and selfishness in him that he didn't care about anybody but himself. And so So God was showing me the difference between, good parenting, good offspring, what you leave to your children. And he was showing me that example that Saul could have been something so great. His family would have been blessed, his sons, his daughters, they would have been blessed. And I mean, they made history in the Bible, but they didn't make a good, or he didn't make a good look for himself. And even if you read throughout the Bible, his grandkids, certain people in his family, they just didn't make it. They died in very bad ways. So there was almost like a curse for the things that Saul had done. And, right when Saul was about to be replaced, it says that Saul sought a medium. He sought a spiritualist to help him get insight on, because he says that God did not want to talk to him. He didn't want to answer his prayers, or so right there God was showing me too that a lot of people nowadays, they don't realize how much hurt they're bringing their family line when they're doing all these new age and witchcraft, all these different things that are spiritual that have nothing to do with God. You're harming your bloodline. You're harming your kids, your grandkids, the generations to come if you're doing those things. And God was really pointing that out to me. He was saying, there's so much going on in the world, and a lot of it is generational curses. And he wants his people to have wisdom in this area because he's tired of it. He's wanting his people to be up there, but because of us parents, the decisions that we're making, because we're not thinking about the generations after us, we're thinking about ourselves. And so, and another part where, God was showing me was, of course, he was showing me 31. And it was so funny because he showed me that part where Saul had pretty much been the downfall of not only himself, but his sons, his three sons. And then God was showing me other parts of the Bible where you could see clearly the number 31 and how it was connected with your bloodline, with your family. And one that he really brought up to me too was Proverbs 31. What does Proverbs 31 speak of? It speaks of, it says, the words of King Lemuel, the utterance which his mother taught him. So if you go to Proverbs 31, you'll see all the wisdom that this mother is instilling in this king. Her son is a king, and she's raising him up to be wise. And even if you look in verse 28, it says, she's telling her son about a wife, that he would find a good wife. And what she said was in verse 28, it says, her children rise up and called her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. So the mother of this king was showing her son how important it was for you to raise your kids a certain way so that they're blessed. And I was starting to think about, how I've gotten this far. And I've said this in a couple of videos, but the ones who really lit up the way for me was my grandparents. Ever since I was little, they would always try to instill, my Christian background. They would, you know, even though I wasn't around them a lot, they tried everything to have me around them so that I could learn, and that the love of God. They would share with me all kinds of testimonies, and you know I would always see them reading their Bibles, worshiping God, giving thanks, all these things. And not only that, but even my grandmother, just the testimony that my grandmother was when she would teach me how to carry myself as a woman, to be classy, to be to be a godly woman, to carry myself a certain way. And also, one thing that I will never forget is my grandparents' marriage. Now, my grandparents' marriage was something that I really admired. My grandparents, they were they were definitely established, and their marriage was so beautiful because, they may had not had all the money and things that they would have liked, but the thing that they instilled in all of us kids, grandkids, is that the inheritance that they left us was their testimony. One thing I really loved about my grandfather is that he would never argue with my grandmother. He was very loving. Even if she got mad at him, he would not sit there and argue with her. He would just hug on her and kiss her on her forehead, and you never saw them arguing, never. And I'm just so grateful that God put them in my life because there was just too many bad examples around me. There was too many things that I could have used as an excuse, like that I could have said, well, I didn't see anybody doing things like this, or I could have said, oh, I've never met a real Christian. All of them are, a certain way. But no, I could not say that. That's not my story because I had grandparents and family that showed me, that paved the way for me, that showed me how much light they gave my path, you know. And this was something that I was thinking of myself. I want to leave something behind when I go on to be with the Lord. For my children, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, I want them to inherit that. You know, whatever I have, whatever wisdom, um whatever God has given me, has instilled in me, whether physical, financial, spiritually, everything. I want my grandkids, my great grandkids, generations to come. I want them to have that. I want them to have that opportunity and that blessing. And that's exactly what David did. He left such an inheritance because he had so much love for God. The Bible says that David was a man after God's own heart. He truly loved God and he tried his best not to do anything wrong. It really hurt him when he would do something wrong. And, which is the opposite of Saul. He definitely did not show that. So I felt really strongly in my spirit what God was saying. There has to be some kind of conviction within you that says, you know, your responsibility to your family, to your kids, to your bloodline. The question is, what kind of light, ask yourself, what kind of light are you being for your family and generations to come? Is your light bright or dim? Will your children or grandchildren trip because your light, your influence is dim? Are you bold against sin or are you easily persuaded? Do you have a heart after God's own heart, like David, or are you stubborn and selfish, like Saul, bent on doing wrong? How are you lighting the way, lighting the steps for your loved ones? So, this is what I feel God was saying on God's heart right now is the future generation. I don't think we understand how important our kids are. Our future generations are going to be so tremendous if we do things right, if we are obedient to what God is telling us. We're the ones that have to pave the way. We're the ones that have to be the example. When your kids walk in the room, what do they see you doing? Are they seeing scrolling on your phone? Or do they see you actually worshiping God? Do they see you praying? Do they see you reading your Bible? Are you showing any kind of fruit? So what I feel what God is saying is be careful. Be careful what you're teaching your kids because it's going to show up. It's going to show up for generations. What you teach your kids, what you let slide, whatever your beliefs are, your belief system, what you're teaching your kids, they're going to reap the consequences if they're not right. Your great grandkids. God is saying He wants to establish His kingdom. He wants to establish His kingdom family. And it starts with us. So, with this, I thank you for listening. If you have any comments, leave it down below. Until the next video.